The Rites of Eleusis. Now, Crowley's presentation of the Rites of Eleusis uh, had very little, if no, resemblance to the Eleusinian mysteries as they were produced uh, in Greece for 2,000 years. But nobody really knows exactly what went on there exactly. Uh, but we can just say that only in the most generic of factors of common denominator does Crowley's series of 7 planetary rituals that he mounted as the Rites of Eleusis only in the most generic way have something in common with the original Rites of Eleusis. They are their own thing. This is the violinist Leila Waddell. She's from New Zealand, and she was Crowley's inspiration, his goddess, he was her adorant. And when you see other pictures of her, you can't blame the guy. That famous picture right there is of Layla. And that wonderful picture with her holding a disc up to her breast is another one. Anyway, we're reading from my introductory comments to dramatic ritual from the Best of the Equinox series, published by Weiser. And this is one of three volumes. The second volume is Dramatic Ritual. And there's Sex Magic, and there is, I forget what the first one's called, but I edited all three for the good folks at Weiser. But anyway, we're continuing with the comments on Crowley's Rites of Eleusis and of dramatic rituals in general. And if you're following along in it, it's on Roman numeral page 9, and I'm reading the Rites of Eleusis. Drama is also magic. In fact, it's the oldest form of magic. We see elements of prehistoric dramatic ritual painted on the walls of caves and scratched upon the bones of extinct animals. Tragedies and comedies of the ancient Greeks were written to be entertaining and thought-provoking, but first and foremost, they were religious observances, celebrated in the temple of Dionysus. And in the back, you can't really see it yet, but there's our Dionysian Maenad tambourine, and I've got the several of our thrices or thrici from the Dionysian revels from the Rite of Jupiter. But anyway, we may not think of them as such, but the stage, the screen, and even television are magical temples. As we watch and listen, we become living triangles of evocation. Laughter, tears, and terror are literally evoked into us by the magic of the play or the film. The magical potential of drama was not lost on our ancestors. Knowing that only a relatively few individuals of every generation are emotionally and intellectually equipped to master the natural and spiritual sciences, the Hierophants of the past discovered that it was yet possible to bring a significant level of enlightenment to the masses. It was very important, for instance, for the working population of ancient agrarian cultures to know the best times to plant and cultivate their crops. However, for most of the labor force, it really wasn't important or even helpful to understand the chain of astronomical events that affect the change of seasons. It was far easier and, on one level, far more truthful to personify the forces and facts of nature as gods, and then make those gods characters in a simple and unforgettable story or play. In the case of an agricultural drama, the story might simply be intended to reveal a lesson that it's best to plant in the early spring rather than in the late autumn. A greater spiritual potential of dramatic ritual lies in the fact that as individuals, each of us can actually become the main character in a sacred drama. And this is the method of initiation, practiced by mystery schools of the past and the initiatory societies of today. The ancient mystery schools were not so much schools of instruction, rather they were schools of experiences, dramatic experiences, skillfully designed to induce profound changes in consciousness to a large number of individuals. Tradition informs us that the techniques of the mystery schools achieved its highest level of perfection in Greece from 2020 BC to nearly 3,000 years into the 300 years into the Christian era of the agricultural mysteries of Demeter and Persephone. They were celebrated for that length of time within the walled citadel of Eleusis. So strict were the oaths of secrecy imposed upon initiates that we're not still entirely certain what went on at the ceremonies themselves. Now I got a footnote here that says even the English word ceremony derives from the rites of Eleusis. Ceres, or Ceres, is another name for Demeter. We know from one indirect source that once the initiatory cycle began with the purifying bath in the Sea of Athens, followed by a ceremonial march from Athens to Eleusis, the secret activities took place over a span of days and included sacred food and drink, music, dance, plays, and vignettes. Most of the events were performed before a large assembly of participants. The climactic conclusion, however, was conferred privately, one candidate at a time. Modern scholars point to evidence that prior to this sublime moment, the candidate most probably was given a psychedelic substance to eat or drink, whatever their technique. The Hierophants of Eleusis succeeded for over 2,000 years in effecting profound changes in the consciousness of countless thousands of individuals. Individuals who, after their initiatory experience, proclaimed with the greatest conviction that they would never fear death again. Now, under the little heading, The Rite of Artemis, we get into what Crowley was up to. One might think that the awe-inspiring ceremonies that took place in the cavernous temples of Demeter at Eleusis would have little in common with the genteel after-dinner parlor diversions of Edwardian London. But that's precisely the venue where the idea for Crowley's Rites of Eleusis was conceived. On a chilly evening in the spring of 1910, to entertain their host, or perhaps merely to sing for their supper. Crowley and his lover, disciple Miss Leila Waddell, engaged in a curious battle that pitted poetry against music. First, Crowley recited a poem he felt would put everybody in an exalted frame of mind. Then he challenged Waddell, a consummate violin virtuoso, to complement and magnify the mood with a piece of music. How many of us have sat around? Well, how many of us old hippies anyway would sit around and listen to music and get a little stoned and then try for the remainder of the evening to amplify that feeling, that bliss, by putting on different pieces of music or reading different cosmic chants or experimental music or videos. Well, they weren't videos in those days. It was movies. But how many of us can identify with that small group of friends blissing each other out for an evening's diversion? But I digress. The exchanges between Crowley and Waddell soon became wildly intense and rapturous. After only a few volleys, everyone in the room found themselves raised to a tangible level of ecstasy. Before the bliss of the moment subsided, Crowley realized he had discovered the basic formula of the Eleusinian technique. Moreover, he now had a vehicle to introduce scientific illuminism and the magic of Thelema to a wider audience. He immediately set to work to create an ecstasy-inducing dramatic ritual that he would stage publicly. The Rite of Artemis. Okay, now footnote says, the Rite of Artemis would later develop into the Rite of Luna, the seventh and last of the Rites of Eleusis. But right now, it was going to be the Rite of Artemis. It was presented for the public and members of the press on the evening of August 23rd, 1910 EV, at the office of the Equinox in London. The element of dance was added to the combination of poetry and music in the person of Victor Newberg, who, aside from being one of the greatest poets of his generation, possessed the thrilling ability to dance with bacchanalic abandon until he collapsed unconscious upon the floor. It was very impressive. Another addition to the artistic mix was the introduction of the cup of libation that was offered to the audience several times during the ceremony to better facilitate the rush of ecstasy. The content of the cup was most likely a potent mix of herbs, alcohol, fruit juice, and mezcal buttons, at the time perfectly legal. Predictably, everybody felt the ecstasy. The reaction was remarkably positive. The next day, Raymond Radcliffe wrote in the August 24th issue of the Sketch magazine, quote, "Beautifully conceived and beautifully carried out, If there is any higher form of artistic expression than great verse and great music, I have yet to learn it. I do not pretend to understand the ritual that runs like a thread of magic through these meetings of the AA. I do not even know what AA is. But I do know that the whole ceremony was impressive, artistic, and produced in those present such a feeling as Crowley must have had when he wrote, "So shalt thou conquer space, and lastly climb the walls of time, and by the golden path the great have trod, reach up to God." Unquote. No one was more ecstatic than Crowley. He was on the road to becoming a magical impresario. So let me check my time here this morning, please. Okay, we've gone 15 minutes. Let's see here. Yes, let's continue. Crowley's Rites of Eleusis. In October and November of 1910, let's see. Yes. Crowley, with the assistance of Waddell, Newberg, and a handful of disciples, publicly presented a series of dramatic rituals entitled the Rites of Eleusis. They were performed on 7 consecutive Wednesday nights at Caxton Hall, Westminster. London had never seen anything quite like it before. The title notwithstanding, these rituals were not attempts to reenact the ancient ceremonies of the Eleusinian mysteries. In fact, the only thing Crowley's Rites of Eleusis had in common with their namesake was simply the fact that they, like the original ceremonies, were written and performed in order to evoke a specific variety of ecstasy in the participants in the audience. Ambitiously, Crowley chose for his format the 7 planets of the ancients, and he arranged the 7 ceremonies according to how the planetary spheres, or Sephiroth, appear on the tree of life. Starting at the top, the 3rd Sephira, Bina, is the sphere of Saturn, and the highest planetary sphere. As we descend the tree, the order of the planetary spheres are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sol, Venus, Mercury, and Luna. This is the sequence of the 7 Rites of Eleusis. They are actually 7 acts to one master drama, the story of the descent of spirit or deity into matter or humanity, and the secret of our return to Godhead. Because the rites demonstrate a descent down the tree of life, each ceremony is not so much the story of the planetary god's exaltation, but rather the story of its decline and fall. Luna, the final rite, also hints on how it all starts again. The rite of Saturn gets the ball rolling by the suicide of the Saturnian hero at the end of the play. Oh, spoiler alert. The next rite, the rite of Jupiter, starts off with the declaration, "Be silent and secret, for it is by stealth that we are here assembled. Know that Saturn hath been deceived, having swallowed a black stone, thinking it to be his son, the child Jupiter. But Jupiter is here enthroned, and shall overthrow his father. Beware, then, lest ye break silence, until Jupiter be ready to make war." And Mars is going to be the next thing, so Saturn from Jupiter from Saturn, Saturn to, or Jupiter to Mars. The following, the war, of course, will be the energy of Mars, the next rite in the sequence, etc. The following analysis was written by Crowley and was part of a booklet provided to the attendees of the rite. Let us add a short analysis of the present series of rites. They may be taken as illustrating humanity, its fate, both good and evil. Man, unable to solve the riddle of existence, takes the counsel of Saturn, extreme old age. Such answer as he can get is one word: despair. Is there more hope in the dignity and wisdom of Jupiter? No, for the noble senior lacks the vigor of Mars, the warrior. Counsel is in vain without determination to carry it out. So Mars invoked is indeed capable of victory, but he has already lost the controlled wisdom of age. In the moment of conquest, he wastes the fruit in the arms of luxury. Venus comes, the sun comes next. It is through this weakness that the perfected man, the sun, is of dual nature, and his twin, his evil twin, slays him in his glory. So the triumphant Lord of heaven, the beloved of Apollo and the Muses, is brought down into the dust. And who shall mourn him? But his mother, nature, Venus, the lady of sorrow and love. Well it is if she bears within her the secret of resurrection. But Mercury too is found wanting. Not in him alone is the secret cure for all the woe of the human race. Swift as ever he pauses and gives place to the youngest of the gods, to the virginal moon. Behold her, Madonna-like, throned and crowned, veiled, silent, waiting the promise of the future. She is Isis and Mary, Ishtar, Bhavani, Artemis, and Diana. But Artemis is still barren of hope until the spirit of the infinite all, the great Pan, tears asunder the veil and displays the hope of humanity, the crowned child of the future. All of this is symbolized in the holy rites, which we have recovered from the darkness of history and now in the fullness of time disclose that the world may be redeemed. Not one for hyperbole, that Crowley. In the late 1970s, under the sponsorship of several OTO bodies in Northern and Southern California, the Rites of Eleusis were resurrected and again presented. They were an instant hit. Today, largely through the efforts of OTO bodies, the 7 rites are performed each year in numerous locations all over the world. They are extraordinarily producible. Each rite requires only a handful of cast members and a very limited number of props and costumes. They are easily staged in a living room or a backyard, as they are in a theater, hall, or desert or mountain location. If I sound enthusiastic about Crowley's Rites of Eleusis, I am. In the last 25 years, Constance and I have had the pleasure of staging the entire series a number of times and have participated in other groups' productions as well. We discovered firsthand that these little collections of poetry, music, and dance are more than plays with a magical theme. In the purest tradition of Eleusinian mysteries, they are really initiatory experiences in which both the cast and the audience are treated to a highly personalized change of consciousness. It is my hope that you experience some of the rapture and ecstasy of the true dramatic ritual within these pages. I especially recommend that you read the poetry sections out loud. And that's what I wrote for the book, The Magic of Aleister Crowley, and which I also included in my opening words of the Best of the Equinox series, Volume 2. Tomorrow, there's more fun stuff, some of it not easily published and published anyplace else, and I'm going to share that with you tomorrow. Also, if you're thinking about the Rites of Eleusis, you might want to Google around and find the rock opera, the Rites of Eleusis, produced by the OTO up in Seattle. They produced the whole, professionally in a theater, produced the Rites of Eleusis as a rock opera. And the videos for those, I believe, are available for your enjoyment everywhere. So Google it around. Maybe someone can put the link up here on my page. And that's something I'm sure you'd enjoy. But until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love's the law. Love under will.